Greetings, beloved light warriors. It's Saratoga, and this is your weekly focus card reading for the week beginning April 5th through April 11th, 2021. And if you're new to my channel, you should know that I do this every Sunday so that we can reset our focus and our energy for the coming week ahead. And then I do my regular on-camera videos on Tuesdays and Fridays. Okay, so let us get into this beautiful card and this coming week ahead. So the card says, 5th Chakra, Archangel Gabriel. This is absolutely a gorgeous card, and I think the message that this card has for us is so incredibly important right now. So the 5th chakra is the throat chakra, and you can see in this image of Archangel Gabriel that at his throat there is a beautiful blue orb representing the throat chakra. And the color that is usually associated with that chakra is sort of a robin's egg blue color. And this chakra is very much about communication and authentic expression and the freedom to express. And Archangel Gabriel is well known to support communication and expression and the arts and writing and anything at all that involves the expression and having the impact of your authentic, most empowered self. So what a perfect combination on this card of this powerful angel and that 5th chakra. So I think that, boy, this could not be coming at a better time. We have been programmed since birth. You know, I want to say, I think our life is going to turn out to look like prior to 2020 and after 2020. It's sort of like the beginning of 2020 was a very stark dividing line. So let's talk about prior to 2020, because we're still carrying that programming with us. Prior to 2020, we were all born into a system where we were programmed to live what I like to call a cookie cutter lifestyle. We were all encouraged to be like everybody else, you know, follow the program, do things the way we were told. And if you were different, if you didn't fit in, then you risked being socially rejected, demeaned, diminished, or discredited. Okay, so we have that programming in us, of that programming of compliance and fitting in and basically doing what we're told by outside authorities. So then along comes 2020, and all of that is abruptly ended. It's all being shut down. It's all being dismantled. So we are now in this state of being profoundly repressed and suppressed. It's interesting, this card has a throat chakra, because when you think about all the censorship and the effect that has on us, this is a very powerful message. I think it could also be a warning, like, be very careful about how all of this suppression is affecting you. And I'm going to mention a little more about that in a moment when it related to how we think as well as how we speak. So understand that we are all carrying that previous programming from prior to 2020 of, you know, what happens if you're different? What happens if you don't fit in? And I think that might actually be partly why things are so divisive right now and people are so argumentative, because they don't, when you're coming out of that old program, you don't really have your bearings. You don't know, well, what's right and what's wrong, and I don't know, because they're taking everything apart, so I don't have a way to measure if someone's right or wrong anymore. So you end up with a lot of, this is not the only reason, but it does contribute to the division. So now what they have is they're putting a mask on our face, social distancing, all of this, just total separation from each other, and from what we formerly knew as our lives. So this could really produce a dramatic shutdown of this chakra. And I think the message from this card is, be very careful that you do not allow that to happen. It's very important that we feel comfortable and confident to express our authentic selves. The other thing I want to say about communication that I think is so important is that communication is also a two-way street. It's about giving and receiving. just like our breath is, you know, the exhale and the inhale. Communication has the yin and the yang aspect to it. So if you're communicating to someone else, you are the output and they are receiving what you're communicating or what you're expressing. So always keep in mind that communication is always a two-way street. Because see, if you're just standing in an empty room and nobody hears you and you're talking to whomever when there's no one there, you only have half of that communication present because it requires a receiving side. And we could even look at this from an aspect of following your passion, living your passion. I know there's a lot of times where people feel like, oh man, I want to be an artist of some kind, or there's something I want to express in the world, but they don't actually go out and do it because there's a fear that it will not be well received, or there's a fear that it won't be liked. See, that all comes from that old programming that I was talking about, the prior to 2020 programming, right? So we need to really discard all of that and shed all of that and release all of that programming, release the past, release that old world that had us so suppressed. And not be afraid to express who we are, but also express who you are in a way that makes a connection with someone else. Okay, communication is not just bombarding somebody with your ideas and trying to bulldoze them into accepting what it is you want to say. That creates arguments and division, right? So the highest level of communication involves a lot of sensitivity, a lot of intuitiveness, a lot of sensing the receiver's state of mind, state of energy. In other words, they're making it very difficult now for us to make these connections with each other. So I want to encourage you to be mindful of this and maintain your human connections to other people so that you can express yourself authentically and be who you really are. Now, I also want to bring up another aspect that is coming to me from the messaging that I'm getting for this particular reading. And that has to do, I was just talking about outward communication and outward expression and authenticity, right? So that's one aspect that we want to be aware of. But there's another message in this card as well. And that's actually what makes me, usually before I record these readings, I will sit with the card and just be with it for a while and get a feel for, what is the message that this card wants to tell us, or coming cards don't tell us anything, but you know what I mean. What is the message that we are needing to hear? Because I just like to be with the card for a few minutes beforehand. And I think the rose, I put the rose here because the rose is so symbolic of the heart and of love. So all of our communication should be coming from the heart and from love, because that's who we are at the highest possible level. Now, let me go back to what I started to say a moment ago about another aspect of communication that is very important for us to be aware of. That has to do with what we communicate to ourselves, okay? Are we communicating to ourselves in a loving way? Or are we communicating to ourselves in a negative, fear-based, anxiety-ridden way? Because this is also very important, because how we communicate to ourselves, how we speak to our own selves, is going to affect our energy and affect our vibration and affect our entire experience. So realize that the ego, which I'm going to have to do an entire video about, but realize that the ego is generally the voice of negativity. Okay, it's the voice that wants to put you down, depress you, make you feel like you can't, cause you to hold back and not trust yourself, lose your confidence, all of that sort of thing. That's generally the voice of the ego. There's a very specific reason why the ego talks to us that way, but I'm not going to sidetrack on that here. I'll put that in a different video. So you want to realize, that is not relevant to who you really are. The voice of relevancy that you want to take more than anything else is the voice of your heart, because your heart is connected to omnipresent love, it is connected to who you really are at the highest possible level, your heart always has messages for you. So are you receiving those messages? Are you open to those messages? Or are you going to let the ego just, push them away and say, oh, I don't listen to your heart. Your heart doesn't know anything. Listen to me instead. That would be the voice of the ego, right? Just such a brilliant voice it is. I'm being very sarcastic, as you could probably tell. But anyway, so we want to think about how we're communicating to ourselves. So there's two things here. It's how are you communicating outwardly? How are you expressing yourself in the world? How are you expressing yourself to other people? Are you doing so with sensitivity, with intuition, making a connection with that person, understanding what we all have in common as human beings, as a humanity, and speaking to people from that place rather than from a place of division and fear and anger and all of that stuff, which doesn't go anywhere and never has and never will, right? So that's one aspect. And then secondarily, you want to say, well, how am I communicating to myself? How do I talk to myself every day? Am I just telling myself all day long, oh, things are terrible, nothing's going to work out, what are we going to do, this is all so horrible, and oh, my life is a mess, and what about this and what about that? Are you talking to yourself in that way? Or are you speaking to yourself in love? Are you speaking to your body with love? Are you understanding that your body, which includes your mind and your emotions, has to navigate through this crazy situation? And you are the greatest love for yourself. You have the most direct connection to yourself to open that channel of love that's going to nourish and nurture you and support you from that divine heart that is connected to omnipresent love, that is connected to that source of incredible beauty and creation. So that's what makes you whole. When you make that connection and you allow that flow to happen within you, you're speaking to yourself from love. And whenever you find that you're not speaking to yourself from love, just correct it. Say, hey, am I talking to myself in a way that's making me feel horrible? Because if you are, just all you have to do is stop. It's not a big deal. Just say, oh, I'm just not going to do that. I'm just going to stop. See how simple that is? And then how are you expressing and communicating to others? If you really understand this message at its deepest level, you're going to feel like the most graceful, the most beautiful, the most whole, the most pristine, the most divine being that you could ever imagine. Because that's who you really are. That is your true nature. And then you're not allowing yourself to be crushed by the craziness that's going on this planet. Okay, so I think that's it for this message for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you found it inspiring and supportive. And I'm wishing you all a beautiful week ahead. I'm sending you all so much love, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a beautiful week, everyone. Namaste.